Semitic Magic, Its Origins and Development by R. Campbell Thompson. So, they saw to it that he drank an even number and then succeeded in bewitching him. Now, the sermon that I did today mentions the even and the odd, and some people do something different. They try to have only odd numbers, and they will overeat and stuff like this just to have an odd number of things that they ate or whatever. That's but if people are very particular about that thing, it could have effects like that. When he went in the street, he was met by a certain merchant, who said, "I see a murdered man walking before me." Not able to proceed further, the drunken man embraced a tree for support, when the tree emitted a groan and dried up. And the man was killed. But even witchcraft has no effect against a heavenly decree. According to R. Hanina, there was a woman who tried to take the earth from beneath his foot and said, "If you think you will succeed in affecting me with your witchcraft, go on and do so, as I am not afraid." And that relates to, what was said about Moses is dust or sand or something was taken from underneath the foot of Moses. Well, where he walked. But, 16 cups, the dude died from alcohol poisoning. Thank you very much. It's curious to see that there's an Arab tradition that magic will not work while he that works it is asleep. Sadur and Gadur were two of the Egyptian magicians pitted against Moses, and the sons of the famous sorcerer were sent for to court, and their mother persuaded them to go to their father's tomb and ask for his advice. The father answered their call and told them, among other things, that enchantments have no effect while the enchanter is asleep. And Surah 7 of the Quran, I don't know what could be possibly referred to, but perhaps something that relates to this. But the dead are not the ones who answer our prayers. It's familiars. People can connect to the energy and the memory and legacy. But if I go to a graveyard, I'm not worshiping the dead. I'm not praying to the dead. If there are pious believers of whatever sort, whether they know or not, okay, fine, for their benefit. But I'm not interceding on behalf of people who don't deserve it either. I didn't articulate that too well, but I think you get what I mean. Although the power of evil spirits was much feared, yet wise men could sometimes overreach Satan himself in cunning. Such tales exist, especially among the modern Arabs who delight to relate such legends, particularly if they redound to the credit of local patriotism. Iblis once sent his son to an assembly of honored people with a flintstone and told him to have that flintstone woven. He came in and said, "My father sends his peace and wishes to have this flintstone woven." A man with a goat beard said, "Tell your father to have it spun, and then we will weave it." The Bible says don't trim. So if these people are insulting people who The son went back, and the devil was very angry. He told his son never to put forth any suggestion when a goat-bearded man was present, for he is more devilish than we. Curiously enough, Rabbi Joshua ben Hananiah makes a similar request in a context against the wise men of Athens, who have required him to sew together the fragments of a broken millstone. He asks in reply for a few threads made of the fiber of the stone. The good folk of Mosul, too, have ever prided themselves on a ready wit against the devil. Time was, as my servant related to me, when Iblis came to Mosul and found a man planting onions. They fell to talking, and their fellowship agreed to divide the produce of the garden. Then, on a day when the onions were ready, The partners went to their vegetable patch, and the man said, Master, wilt thou take as thy half that which is above the ground of that which is below? Now the devil saw the good green shoots of the onion sprouting high, and so carried these off as his share, leaving the gardener chuckling over his bargain. But when wheat time came around, and the man was sowing his glebe on a day, the devil looked over the ditch and complained that he had made nothing out of the compact. This time, quoth he, we will divide differently, and thou shalt take the tops. And so it fell out. They visited the tilth together when the corn was ripe, and the fellah reaped the field, and took away the ears, leaving the devil stubbing up the roots. Presently, after he had been digging for a month, he began to find out his error, and went to the man, who was cheerfully threshing his portion. This is a paltry quibble, said Iblis. Thou hast cozened me this twice. Nay, said the former, I gave thee thy desire, and furthermore, thou didst not thresh out thine onion tops, as I am doing with this. So it was a sanguine devil that went away to beat the dry onion stalks, but in vain, and he left Mosul sullenly stalking away in dudgeon, and stopping once in a while to shake his head against so crafty a town. Cursed be ye, tricksters, who can outmatch devilry like yours. In the present book, the Assyrian incantation tablets are frequently used as a base for the various hypotheses put forward, this being the most logical method at present available. In the cuneiform tablets, we have the actual wizardry in vogue at the time they were written, when runs at least from the 7th century onward till the time when the cuneiform ceased to be used. Moreover, in these texts, we are dealing with no underhand sorcery, surreptitiously carried on, but fair and open magic, of which the value is attested by the excellent language in which they are couched, and the high regard in which the class which made such a profession theirs was held. Throughout the rest of the civilized world, Chaldean magic was indeed a name to conjure by, particularly from its astrological side, which, through its thoroughness, had gained great repute. Stand now, says Isaiah, with thine enchantments, and with the multitude of thy sorceries, wherein thou hast labored from thy youth. If so be thou shalt be able to profit, if so be thou mayest prevail, thou art wearied in the multitude of thy counsels. Let now the astrologers, the stargazers, the monthly prognosticators stand up and save thee from the things that shall come upon thee. The word Kassadim, Chaldeans, in Assyrian, Kaldu, a people dwelling on the lower Euphrates and Tigris, assumes that the time of the book of Daniel was written. The significance of magicians, the Syriac writers attest the same notoriety, and the Isaiah passage was 47, 12 and 13. Bardesson saith, Have you read the books of the Chaldeans, which are in Babylon, in which are written what the stars affect by their associations with the nativities of men? Plutarch quotes the Chaldeans as believing that, of the planets, 2 are beneficial gods, 2 are hostile, and 3 are neutral. Saturn and Mars would be hostile, right? Well, Sun, I'm not sure how they divide the rest, because you'd think that Sun would be beneficial and Venus would be beneficial. are the entities that they ascribe to Venus. Or, The heading to a book in late Hebrew called The Wisdom of the Chaldeans runs, "This is the book used by the Chaldeans, which they composed through their meditations and speculations in divine wisdom, and through the overflow of the spirit of prophecy upon them, by their strong adherence to their wisdom and of their meditations in the divine wisdom, and their speculations concerning the spheres and the spirits that roll these spheres and move them." Among Greek writers we find Strabo saying that the Chaldeans were skilled in astronomy and the casting of horoscopes, and Alion of the 3rd century. Strabo died in 24 of the Common Era, so in the 200s, the 3rd century for Alion, quotes both Babylonians and Chaldeans as possessing a considerable knowledge of astronomy. Diodorus Siculus, a contemporary of Augustus, says that the Babylonian priest observed the position of certain stars in order to cast horoscopes, and they interpreted dreams and derived omens from the movement of birds and from eclipses and earthquakes. Magic is said to have introduced among the Greeks by Wathanus, who came into Greece with Xerxes and dispersed the rudiments of it wherever he had the opportunity. It was afterwards much improved and brought to perfection by Democritus, who was said to have learnt it out of the writings of certain Phoenicians. Horace voices the popular view: "Tu ne quasir es scier nefas, quem mehe, quem tipe, finem de dederint, eucanoa nec Babylonias, temptaris numerus." A lot of temptation. I don't. They really should translate those things, right? The quote is Carmina 1:11. Okay. "Indeed, in modern times in the East, from Morocco to Mesopotamia, books of magic are by no means rare, and manuscripts in Arabic, Hebrew, Gershuni, and Syriac can be frequently bought, all dealing with some form of magic or popular medicine. In Suakin, in the Sudan, I was offered a printed book of astrology in Arabic, illustrated by the most grotesque and bizarre woodcuts of the signs of the zodiac, the blocks for which seem to have done duty in other places. Such books existed in manuscript in ancient days, as is vouched for by the story of the Sibylline books, or the passage in Acts 19:19. Not a few of them that practiced curious arts brought their books together and burned them in the sight of all. It is the Ashurbanipal, king of Assyria, 668 to 626 BCE, that we owe, in the main, our knowledge of cuneiform magic, for during his reign, book collecting became a passion with him, and he established a system of obtaining copies of the best tablets in all Iraq. The great temple cities in Babylonia afforded him an inexhaustible source to draw on for the formation of his library in Nineveh, and to this end many scribes were set to work to copy and translate the ancient tablets. For the temples of these cities were like the modern monasteries which still exist in the East, each having its library of manuscripts, and it was from these that the king obtained his material and made the basis of his great work. By some happy chance, there are still extant 2 duplicate copies of a letter which was written by a king to the city of Babylonia, ordering those in authority to search the hidden store of records laid in the shrines of those they called gods, or treated as gods, or entities, or whatever. I'm not sure of the context, but I don't necessarily consider everything that's listed as a god in a book a god. These two date from the latter Babylonian Empire. It is quite possible that they are copies of the original letter that was sent by Ashurbanipal more than 100 years previously and preserved in Babylonia as a valuable record, for it is on the model of the royal letters of this period. The word of the king unto Shadunu, I am well, mayest thou be happy. The day that thou seest this letter of mine, take with me Shuma, the son of Shuma Ukina, Bel Ater, his brother Apla, the son of Arkat Elani, and such people of Borsippa as thou knowest, and seek out all the tablets which are in their houses, and all the tablets laid up in the temple of Ezada, and collect the tablets of the king, of the tablets for the days of the month Nisan, the stone, of the month Tisri, of the series Bit Sala, the stone. Bit Sala is K 2832. The stone for reckoning the day, the 4 stone for the head of the royal bed, and the woods Urkarinu, and the cedar for the head of the royal bed, the series incantation, May Ea and Marduk, complete wisdom, all the series that are relating to war, besides all their copious documents that there are, and the series in the battle, a staff shall not come near the man, and the series Edina, Debida, Agal, Torah, spells, prayers, stone inscriptions, and those that are excellent for my royalty, the series Tekpirte, Ade, Ege, Nigin, Na. Although this is in the trouble, whatever may be necessary in the palace, and seek out the rare tablets such as are to be found on your route, but do not exist in Assyria, and send them to me. I'm sending the authority for Shatam and Shaku officials. Thou shalt put them in thy strong box. No one shall withhold tablets from thee, and if there be any tablet or spell which I have not made mention of to you, and thou shalt learn of it, and it is good for my palace, search for it, and get it, and send it to me. But in addition to the magical tablets from Ashurbanipal's library, many come from Babylonia, written during the latter Babylonian Empire. Some of them date to the reign of Alexander, and others are as late as the Arsacid period, and there is consequently no lack of material. These grimoires were written in a series of several tablets, but each being given some name. The best known at present are the Makalu, burning, Shurpu, consuming, Utuki, Limnuti, evil spirits, Te'e, headaches, Asaki, Marsuti, fever sickness, Labartu, hog demon, and Nishkate, raising of the hand, are also large classes of ceremonial and medical texts, which throw considerable light on the magical practices. And there's a phrase, reckoning the day, that refers to the calculation of the durations of the month as whether it will consist of 29 or 30 days. The intercalculation is a phrase used in the Quran too, that that implies the messing with the changing the months from their physical when they're from the actual physical place that they should be in. The series Makalu contains 8 tablets, all giving directions, as have been shown earlier in the chapter, for incantations and spells against wizards and witches. The motive, which runs through the whole series, instructs the bewitched person how to make figures of his enemies and then destroy them with prayers. If they are to be burnt, then the fire god is the object of adoration. So sort of an Agni figure. Maybe. We'll see. O flaming fire god, mighty son of Anu, thou art the fiercest of thy brothers. Thou canst give judgment like Sin and Shemaz, the moon and sun. Judge thou my case, and grant me decision. Burn up my sorcerer and sorceress. O fire god, burn up my sorcerer and sorceress. O fire god, consume my sorcerer and sorceress. O fire god, burn them. O fire god, consume them. O fire god, overpower them. O fire god, destroy them. O fire god, carry them off. Okay, what's the word for fire god? Why do we not say moon and sun, but then we say the word fire? The reading Asaku and not Ashaku. Oh, fever, sickness, okay. The series Sherpu consists of 9 tablets which contain prayers, incantations, and exorcisms against the ban or taboo which lies on the man through some unknown sin or uncleanliness. The priest recites a list of sins which the man may have committed, and so laid himself open to the ban which is now plaguing him. Hath he set a son at variance with his father, a father with a son, a daughter with a mother with a daughter, and so on. A great many of the sins which are now reckoned as moral offenses, all pointing to a very highly civilized community, and include the use of false weights, the acceptance of money wrongfully earned, lying, stealing, adultery, and murder. But there is another stratum underlying them, which decidedly points to a distinction between those persons who are ceremonially clean and those who are not. Briefly, a proof of the existence of the taboo among the Babylonians. This question is discussed at length in the chapter devoted to the subject. The series Utug Hul Amesh. Utuki Lemnuti, evil spirits, is, as its name implies, a series of spells directed against the attacks of demons, goblins, and ghosts. Is it Utug Chul Amesh? Or Utug Chul Amesh? I'm not sure. Attacks of demons, goblins, and ghosts, and it consisted originally of at least 16 tablets, of which we have now the 3rd, 5th, and 16th in an almost complete form, and the greater part of 4 others, besides several large fragments of the remainder. They are for the use of priests or exorcists in driving out the devils from possessed persons, and the general tenor is the same throughout the whole text. Devils are to be combated by invoking the entities to help, and they may be laid under a ban or divine taboo. The most important point is that a categorical description shall be given of the particular demon in question, and to this end it is obviously impossible for the magician to make an exact diagnosis. He runs through long lists of the names and descriptions of evil spirits. Now, one thing, we see in the Quran every subject being mentioned, so people responding to a certain thing, that's one way the exorcist finds a way to deal with it, without calling on the spirits and stuff like we see here. And there's specific passages that are general exorcisms and that sort of thing, are specific things that can be drawn out. So it's sort of the same practice. I mean, that's how it's related. Both the entities considered to be gods and demons have the power of putting a ban on others. Tiamat in the creation legend, when attacked by Marduk, recited an incantation pronounced by her spell. 2 series written for the purpose of curing various bodily ills. The Asaki, Marsuti, and Te'i are similar to the preceding in many points. These ailments are treated as devils and exercised frequently with atonement offerings. That is to say, sympathetic magic is as the base of the treatment, and the evil influence is transferred to a wax figure representing the sick man or even the carcass of a pig or kid. The Asaki Marsuti consisted of at least 12 tablets, where the Te'e ended at the 9th tablet. The series of the raising of the hand prayer is another devoted to magic. It consisted of prayers and incantations to various entities, sometimes being intended to remove the evils attendant on eclipses. These powers are often accompanied by directions for certain ceremonies and rites, such as placing a censer and burning incense. Now, Islam for example, has an eclipse prayer, but the eclipse is neither a good or a bad omen. It doesn't happen because people are born or died, that sort of thing. The series Labertu, as its name implies, concerns the evil spirit or hag demon, which gives its name to these texts, the kind of female devil who attacks children especially. 3 tablets are at present extant, giving directions for making figures of the Labertu and the incantations to be repeated over them. The Babylonian ritual was elaborate as the Jewish. Ritual ceremonies consisted with Babylonians as with other nations of indeterminable repetitions and tedious directions for the proper number of censers, tablets, wine jugs, and other furniture used in making sacrifices, of instructions for the different sorts of food, flesh, and wine which must be used, and how each is to be treated. Now, one thing that we have to look out for in organized, when prophet-based religion, it's not that the prophets make things super complex with, we got to repeat this 7 times and this and that and the other. Well, and if it is, there's something very simple with that, but you want something that the regular people, anybody can get up and learn and do these things. That's what Zarathustra and such came with. There wasn't elaborate rituals for setting up a fire to pray in front of and that sort of thing. These were obviously grafted on from old things, are brought about anew. So, the following is a specimen. Before the rising of the sun, thou shalt prepare 1 offering for Shamash. 1 censer thou shalt place before Shamash. 1 censer thou shalt place before Adad. 1 censer thou shalt place before Marduk. 1 censer thou shalt place before Aa. 1 censer thou shalt place before Bunene. 1 censer thou shalt place before Ketu. 1 censer thou shalt place before Masharu. 1 censer thou shalt place before the entity of the man. A table thou shalt place behind the censer, which is before Shamash. Thou shalt place thereon 4 jugs of sesame wine. Thou shalt set thereon 3 times 12 loaves made of wheat. Thou shalt add a mixture of honey and butter, and sprinkle with salt. A table shalt thou place behind the censer, which is before Adad. A table thou shalt place behind the censer, which is before Marduk. Adad's another name for Baal, so we have the 7, and one particular sort of an agent, the Yazidi, and by whatever name kind of cue you into some of what's going on there, and so on. The medical texts are also of great help in the study of Assyrian demonology, as much as the physician was always receptive of aid from the sister art. Hence, interspersed among prescriptions of drugs and herbs, we find short incantations scattered throughout the pharmacopoeia. For the Babylonian medicine man was but a witch doctor with the herbalist knowledge of simple combined with an ingenious belief in abracadabra. And the Bible, speaking its pharmaceutical, as well, medicine and pretty much anything didn't have it was always in religious context, wasn't it? These spells, brief as they be, often reveal some little superstition, some remnant of folktale, which sometimes reappears in the traditions of the dwellers in modern Iraq. The belief in little worms that eat the teeth is current in Mesopotamia, in China, and among the Malays, and yet it can be shown to have existed in Babylonia 2,000 years ago and more. A lot of the magic and the beliefs associated with the evil magic, or the jinn magic, as some people are calling it nowadays, definitely finds a source. And let me... Oh, okay. This is the cuneiform legend. After Anu had created the heavens created the earth created the rivers created the canals created the marshes created the worm. Came the worm and went before the sun, before Ea came to her tears. What wilt thou give me for my food? What wilt thou give me for my devouring? I will give thee ripe figs and scented wood. What are these ripe figs to me, or scented wood? Let me drink among the teeth, and set me on the gums, that I may devour the blood of the teeth, and of their gums destroy the strength. Then shall I hold the bolt of the door. Since thou hast said this, O worm, Ea shall smite thee with the might of his fist. And the devouring is destroying. Give me for my destroying. The figs. Okay, and devils and evil spirits, this was incorrectly translated as dry bones. Ishma is the word in question, and I read it as a Semitic word. Ishma connected with atzim, bone. More probably, it should be regarded as an ideogram for titu. See Tana. The line's difficult. Kusasi is known elsewhere. And okay, there's a ritual for the toothache. A ritual for it is a mix of fermented drink, the plant, seckelbeer, and oil together. Repeat the incantation 3 times and put it on his tooth. In Mosul, I was given some dried henbane berries, which had been brought down from the hills, and was told on good native authority that a man with a toothache would fumigate his teeth with them until the worm dropped out of his mouth. The same principle of developed magic is apparently in the charm of the heart plant, which is presumably the Hycosimus muticus, which is grown in Sinai, Makan. The Arabs call it sakran, drunken. And okay, what's that? Hyas Kaiamas muticus.